Paul Feinbaum again. No one expected Bama to be compared to Georgia. It may be offensive to some, but let's look at the issue itself. Subscribe to the channel to receive more Bama news. The story is that Georgia's loss to Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl brought up some inevitable comparisons. Paul Feinbaum, a traditionally sharp commentator, didn't hesitate to say that, with this fall, Georgia now carries the weight of what Alabama represented for so many years, the team to beat, the team that others hope to knock off to prove they are ready for the top. How cool is that? It's funny how stories in college football can change quickly. Remember when Alabama was on top of the world and everyone wanted to be the next great team to knock them off? Well, Georgia, which has been the recent sensation according to some, has now seen its own house of cards crumble in the face of Notre Dame. Feinbaum, with the characteristic manner of someone who understands the historical weight of these institutions, made it clear that the game against the Fighting Irish made Georgia become the new Alabama, and not in the best way. In fact, Alabama, with its unbeatable tradition, seems to have been the reflection of what everyone expected of Georgia, the team that had already done everything right, had already won the titles and continued to be dominant. Now, in 2024, Alabama finds itself in a somewhat difficult situation, with an atypical season and a lot to adjust to. But anyone who knows college football knows, this is not the end, much less the end of Alabama. Tradition is stronger than any bad season, and the team knows how to reinvent itself. Alabama does not need excuses, as Feinbaum aptly put it, but it is impossible to ignore the strength that this team's tradition carries. Of course, Kalen DeBoer's work has been crucial at this time. DeBoer brings a new energy that everyone is waiting for, a new vision and a plan to rebuild the hegemony that, even though it has deviated in 2024, will certainly return. Anyone who knows football knows that a bad season is just a pause for rebirth, and with the work of Coach DeBoer, it is possible to say for sure, Alabama is still in a strategic position to come back with full force. So, if you are looking at Alabama with a hint of skepticism, you better think again. The team may be going through a difficult time, but the problems are temporary and the ability to overcome challenges is what defines Alabama. The Bulldogs may even have their morale a little high, but at the end of the day, the one with the history, the one with the tradition, is Alabama. And yes, Georgia's loss to Notre Dame may have cast a shadow over the Bulldogs, but nothing can take away from the certainty that, with DeBoer at the helm, a comeback is on the way for Bama. Let's keep going. Malik Benson is undoubtedly one of the most talked about names in college football, and his recent journey only adds layers to a story of change and high expectations. The former Alabama wide receiver, who spent just one season in Tuscaloosa, was one of the most promising names in the 2023 class, but life with the Crimson Tide didn't pan out the way many expected. After a season in which he recorded 13 receptions for 162 yards and a touchdown, Benson decided to seek new horizons, transferring to the Florida State Seminoles, where he had more opportunities to showcase his talent. But, as we know, college football is a game of constant change. What seemed like a promising new start at Florida State ended up being just another chapter in Benson's career. Now, the wide receiver's destiny is even more exciting. He is committed to the Oregon Ducks, a Big Ten team with a strong tradition and a clear ambition to compete for titles. For Benson, this move represents another chance to shine and reach the potential that many expected of him when he arrived at Alabama. It's interesting how mobility in college football has increased in recent years, with players like Benson taking advantage of the extra year of eligibility offered by the NCAA. Benson, along with other big names like quarterback Diego Pavia, has the chance to shape his career in a more strategic way, playing for a school that needs an impact player at his position. And the Oregon Ducks, with their explosive offense and championship ambitions, could be exactly the place for Benson to show his worth. For Alabama fans, the news of Benson's transfer may bring mixed feelings. Although his time in Tuscaloosa was short, the player's talent was evident from the beginning, and it's hard not to wonder how his trajectory could have developed. But in college football, change is part of the game, and Alabama certainly has plenty of other talent waiting to shine. Benson's departure doesn't diminish the Crimson Tide's greatness, but it is a reminder that, at the end of the day, football is a constant search for opportunities to grow and succeed. Now, with the Ducks, Benson has the chance to reinvent himself, find his consistency and, who knows, become one of the big names next season. What is clear is that, regardless of the institution he represented, Malik Benson's journey is not just one of challenges, but of a relentless pursuit of excellence. Good luck to the guy. Alabama, which in 2024 had a season below expectations, as everyone already knows. The Crimson Tide, traditionally one of the most powerful forces in college football, saw its first year under the command of Kalen DeBoer be marked by difficulties, with the team not reaching the standard of excellence expected by its fans and the team's history. And, to make matters worse, Alabama received new news that was not very encouraging these days. Former tight end Ty Lockwood is transferring to Boston College, something that certainly shakes up expectations for the immediate future of the program. This transfer has an even more significant tone when we analyze the context. Lockwood, who had been a four-star prospect in the 2023 class, was one of the team's great promises. When he chose Alabama over other tempting offers, such as Vanderbilt, Ohio State, LSU, and Tennessee, many believed that he could be a fundamental piece in the Crimson Tide's offense. However, with the departure of Bill O'Brien, who was Alabama's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach until 2022, the landscape has changed. O'Brien is now the head coach at Boston College, and it's the connection with the former Nick Saban assistant that apparently led Lockwood to make the decision to follow his old mentor to Chestnut Hill. This move, while understandable from a player's perspective, raises deeper questions about Alabama and its ability to retain its elite talent. Even in a tough season, losing players with Lockwood's profile to a direct rival, let alone a program that was coached by a former Saban assistant, is certainly not an ideal scenario for any team. The fact that Boston College also has another former Crimson Tide player in quarterback Dylan Lonergan only makes this move more intriguing, as the Chestnut Hill program appears to be leveraging old connections to mold a more competitive team. But if there's one lesson to be learned here, it's that Alabama, despite its losses, still carries a historic strength that few can match. The Crimson Tide had a tough year, but team tradition isn't built on a single season, and with Kalen DeBoer at the helm, Alabama is expected to find its form again. Sure, the departure of talent like Lockwood may leave a temporary void, but there's no doubt the program will continue to attract big names, especially when you consider the firepower and legacy of Nick Saban. With DeBoer and the rest of the coaching staff, the Crimson Tide has everything it needs to rebuild. What's it like to be Nick Saban today? Nick Saban, the name behind the most imposing reign in modern college football, has undergone a transformation that, if it weren't meant to be so ironic, might seem unlikely. He, the unbeatable coach, the Darth Vader of the sidelines, known for his intensity, focus and that relentless attitude, is now college football's favorite uncle. The uncle with no filter, the kind who says exactly what he thinks and has fun doing it. Saban, who was once the image of college football's rigidity, the one who would have his assistants call him on holidays so he would have an excuse to get out of family events, is now on ESPN's screens. And, surprisingly, he fits in perfectly. From a coach who literally molded generations of players to a media commentator who simply shows up and speaks his mind, Saban has become a more relaxed and irreverent version of himself, without losing the clarity and weight of his words. The Saban on the field was imposing, a one-man army at Alabama, demanding more of his players than many thought possible. But as the years passed and college football changed with NIL and the transfer portal, the pressures of coaching grew. Retirement, which seemed like a distant reality, was replaced by a surprise. He was more comfortable on the ESPN set, delivering his point of view with a sharp, irreverent style, unconcerned with what others thought. The man who once shunned the festivities and put football first is now reveling in the life of a commentator. He speaks with brutal candor about SEC players, NIL issues, and even changes he sees as detrimental to the sport. But at the same time, he is looser, more comfortable, and perhaps more authentic than ever. Saban, the uncle of college football, now challenges the status quo with a laugh, a joke, and, of course, no filter. Who would have thought that the most feared coach in college football would become such an approachable and funny figure? ESPN's Saban doesn't shy away from making sarcastic observations, like when he referred to rat shit while discussing more pressing issues in the sport, or when he has had fun teasing his friends and colleagues like Deion Sanders. Whether he's laughing at Sanders or taking swipes at his own team, he now seems more authentic, someone fans can truly relate to. His comments about free agency or the state of nil agreements are accompanied by a nervous chuckle that shows concern but also acknowledges that this is perhaps the state of the game now. Saban, the man who once dominated the field, is now the commentator who offers a new perspective on college football. He's no longer just on the sidelines, he's on the screen, in the center of the conversation, speaking his mind, without worrying about whether or not it will please. And for many, it's hard not to be charmed by this new version of Saban, the uncle of college football. Do you miss the old Coach Saban? Comment.